Hello everyone and welcome back to The Deep, your favorite channel for horror stories. I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone could leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also, like and subscribe. If you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to check out the first pinned comment for more.
Hunting trip horror, escape from Alberta's dark forest. 4 friends from Edmonton, Alberta, Mike, Steve, Jason, and Chris, had been planning their hunting trip for months. They were heading to the remote forests near Hinton, a small town nestled in the heart of Alberta's wilderness. The plan was to spend the weekend hunting, bonding, and enjoying the tranquility of nature. The drive to Hinton was long but filled with laughter and excitement. The friends reminisced about past adventures and talked about their hopes for the trip. Mike, the most experienced hunter among them, was eager to share his knowledge with the group. Steve, always the jokester, kept spirits high with his witty remarks. Jason and Chris, brothers, were looking forward to spending quality time together. As they drove deeper into the forest, the scenery became more dense and remote. The towering trees and rugged terrain made it clear that they were far from civilization. Just as they were nearing their destination, the car sputtered and came to a halt. "Great," Mike muttered, getting out of the car to check the engine. The others followed, looking around at the thick forest that surrounded them. "What do you think it is?" Jason asked. "Not sure," Mike replied, fiddling with the engine. "Could be a lot of things. We're pretty far out, though. We need to fix this fast." As they worked on the car, a chilling sound pierced the air, a scream, distant but unmistakable, coming from deep within the forest. "What was that?" Chris asked, his voice trembling. "Sounded like someone's in trouble," Steve said, grabbing his hunting rifle. "We should check it out." Mike hesitated. "We're here to hunt, not play hero." "But we can't just ignore that." Armed and alert, the 4 friends ventured into the forest, following the direction of the scream. The trees seemed to close in around them, the light dimming as they moved deeper into the woods. The air grew colder, and an eerie silence fell over the forest. The group pressed on, the occasional scream guiding their way. The forest was dense, and every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves set their nerves on edge. They moved cautiously, their weapons ready, scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. After what felt like hours, they stumbled upon an old, dilapidated car half buried in the undergrowth. The car was a relic from another era, rusted and decayed. It looked out of place, as if it had been abandoned for decades. "This is weird," Steve said, peering inside the car. "What's an old car doing out here?" Mike shone his flashlight on the car, revealing faded bloodstains on the seats and a torn piece of fabric hanging from the door. "I don't like this," he muttered. "Something bad happened here." Suddenly, another scream echoed through the trees, closer this time. The friends exchanged worried glances, their fear growing. They followed the sound, their hearts pounding, and found a narrow path leading deeper into the forest. The path led them to a small clearing, where they saw a figure crouched on the ground, rocking back and forth. It was a woman, her clothes torn and dirty, her hair matted with leaves and mud. She looked up as they approached, her eyes wide with terror. "Help me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's coming." "What's coming?" Mike asked, but before she could answer, a low, guttural growl filled the air. The friends turned to see a hulking, shadowy figure emerging from the trees, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The creature was like nothing they had ever seen. It stood over 7 feet tall, with matted fur and elongated limbs. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its mouth was filled with razor-sharp teeth. It let out another growl, a sound that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. "Run!" Mike shouted, raising his rifle. The friends scattered, trying to find cover. The creature moved with terrifying speed, lunging at Steve and knocking him to the ground. He screamed as the creature's claws tore into him. Jason and Chris fired their rifles, but the bullets seemed to have little effect. The creature turned its attention to them, its eyes burning with rage. Mike grabbed a fallen branch and swung it at the creature, trying to distract it. "Get Steve and go," he yelled to Jason and Chris. The brothers grabbed Steve, who was bleeding heavily, and dragged him away. Mike and Lily ran in the opposite direction, hoping to lead the creature away from their friends. They ran through the forest, the creature hot on their heels. The trees blurred past them as they sprinted, their lungs burning with the effort. They stumbled upon an old cabin, its door hanging open. "Get inside!" Mike shouted. They ran into the cabin and slammed the door shut. Mike barricaded it with a heavy table, then turned to Lily. "Are you okay?" Lily nodded, though she was shaking with fear. "What is that thing?" "I don't know," Mike replied, his mind racing. "But we need to find a way to stop it." The creature's growls grew louder as it approached the cabin. Mike looked around for something, anything, that could help. He spotted an old hunting rifle mounted on the wall and grabbed it, hoping it still worked. The door shook as the creature slammed into it, the wood splintering under the force. Mike aimed the rifle at the door, his hands steady despite the fear coursing through him. The creature broke through, its eyes locking onto Mike. He fired, the shot echoing through the cabin. The creature let out a pained roar and stumbled back, but it wasn't enough to stop it. Mike fired again and again, each shot pushing the creature further back until it finally collapsed, its body twitching. Mike and Lily didn't wait to see if it was truly dead. They ran out of the cabin and back towards the car, praying that Jason and Chris had made it out safely. The forest seemed even darker as they ran, the trees closing in around them. Mike's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing with thoughts of his friends. When they reached the car, they found Jason and Chris trying to stop Steve's bleeding. "We need to get him to a hospital," Jason said, his voice panicked. "He's losing too much blood." Mike and Chris quickly fixed the car, their hands shaking as they worked. They managed to get it running and carefully loaded Steve into the back seat. The drive to the nearest town was harrowing, every shadow in the trees a reminder of the creature they had barely escaped. They reached a small clinic in Hinton, where the doctors immediately took Steve into surgery. The friends sat in the waiting room, their clothes stained with blood, their minds numb with shock. Hours passed before a doctor came out to speak with them. "He's stable, but it was a close call," she said. "He's very lucky to be alive." The relief was overwhelming. Mike, Jason, and Chris embraced, their tears a mix of joy and sorrow. They knew their lives would never be the same. Days later, after Steve had recovered enough to travel, the friends returned to Edmonton. The events of the trip haunted them, the memories of the creature and the old car in the forest forever etched in their minds. Mike couldn't shake the feeling that the creature was still out there, lurking in the shadows of the forest. He abandoned hunting, unable to return to the woods that had become a place of nightmares. Steve's injuries healed, but the psychological scars remained. He suffered from nightmares and refused to talk about what had happened. Jason and Chris tried to support him, but they struggled with their own fears and trauma. The four friends drifted apart, each trying to cope with the horror they had experienced in their own way. Mike focused on his work, trying to bury the memories, but he knew he would never forget the creature in the forest. Years passed, and the story of their encounter became a cautionary tale among hunters in Alberta. Few believed the details, dismissing them as exaggerated or fictional. But those who had seen the fear in Mike's eyes knew that something terrible lurked in the forests near Hinton. Mike never returned to the forest, but he always kept a loaded rifle by his side, just in case. The memory of that night remained a dark shadow over his life, a reminder of the unknown horrors that can exist in the most unexpected places. The creature remained in the forest, a guardian of the dark secrets hidden among the trees. And though Mike had escaped, he knew that the forest would never truly let him go. Lost Safari, Escape from Cannibal Village Nightmare. A group of 4 tourists from various parts of the world decided to embark on a once-in-a-lifetime safari adventure in the vast savannas of Africa. The group consisted of Sarah, a travel blogger from the United States, Mark, a wildlife photographer from Australia, Lydia, an adventurous spirit from Germany, and Daniel, a nature enthusiast from Brazil. They were excited and full of anticipation for the journey ahead. Their guide for the safari was a young, inexperienced ranger named Kofi. Despite his limited experience, Kofi was enthusiastic and eager to show them the wonders of the African wilderness. They set off early in the morning, the golden savanna stretching out before them under a brilliant blue sky. The day started off wonderfully. They saw herds of elephants, graceful giraffes, and even a pride of lions lounging under a tree. Kofi regaled them with tales of the savanna, his passion for the land evident in his voice. The tourists were thrilled, snapping photos and soaking in the beauty of the landscape. As the sun began to set, Kofi decided to take them on a different route, hoping to show them a rare sighting of a leopard. However, his inexperience soon became apparent. He took a wrong turn, and they found themselves in an unfamiliar part of the savanna. The light was fading fast, and a sense of unease settled over the group. "We need to head back," Sarah said, her voice tinged with worry. "It's getting dark." Kofi nodded, trying to mask his anxiety. "Yes, let's go back." As they turned the vehicle around, a sudden roar echoed through the air. Before anyone could react, a massive lion leaped out of the tall grass, tackling Kofi and dragging him away. The tourists screamed in horror as they watched the young guide being taken by the predator. "Drive! Drive!" Mark shouted to Daniel, who was closest to the driver's seat. Daniel jumped into the driver's seat, fumbling with the controls. He managed to start the engine and slammed his foot on the gas, speeding away from the terrifying scene. The savanna seemed to close in around them, the darkness and the sounds of the night adding to their fear. Daniel drove through the night, the vehicle bouncing over the rough terrain. The group was silent, each lost in their own thoughts of fear and desperation. Hours passed, and they had no idea where they were or where they were heading. As dawn broke, they spotted a small village in the distance. Exhausted and desperate for help, they decided to approach it, hoping to find assistance and directions back to their camp. The village seemed peaceful at first glance, with modest huts and villagers going about their daily routines. However, as they got closer, a sense of unease grew within them. The villagers stopped and stared at the tourists, their expressions unreadable. A man who appeared to be the village leader approached them, speaking in a language they didn't understand. Lydia, who knew a bit of the local dialect, tried to communicate their plight. The leader nodded and gestured for them to follow him. They were led to a central hut, where they were offered food and drink. Despite their hunger, something about the situation felt off, and they hesitated to accept. Before they could react, the villagers surrounded them, and the atmosphere turned hostile. "Something's wrong," Sarah whispered. "We need to leave." But it was too late. The villagers seized them, binding their hands and leading them to a large, open area. The realization hit them like a punch to the gut. They had stumbled into a village of cannibals. The tourists were thrown into a makeshift cage, their pleas for mercy ignored. The villagers began preparing a large cauldron, their intentions clear. Panic set in as they struggled against their bonds, but the ropes were too tight. As the villagers prepared their gruesome feast, Lydia's mind raced. She refused to accept that this was the end. She observed their captors closely, noting their movements and searching for any opportunity to escape. As night fell, the villagers' attention wavered. They celebrated and drank, their vigilance slipping. Lydia saw her chance. Using a sharp rock she found in the cage, she managed to cut through her ropes. With her hands free, she quietly untied the others. "We have to be quiet and fast," she whispered. "Wait for my signal." They waited until most of the villagers were distracted before making their move. Lydia signaled, and they slipped out of the cage, moving silently towards the edge of the village. They could see the savanna beyond, their path to freedom. Just as they thought they were clear, an alarm was raised. The villagers gave chase, but the tourists ran with every ounce of strength they had left. In the chaos, Lydia became separated from the group. She looked back to see her friends being recaptured, their screams piercing the night. With no other option, Lydia ran into the dense brush, her heart pounding. She ran until she could no longer hear the villagers, collapsing in exhaustion. She knew she couldn't go back for her friends, but she couldn't give up either. Lydia wandered through the savanna, exhausted and disoriented. The sun was merciless, and she had no food or water. She stumbled upon a small, dilapidated village, its buildings in ruins and an eerie silence hanging in the air. Desperate for shelter and help, she entered the village. It seemed abandoned, but she felt an unsettling presence. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she walked through the empty streets, the shadows deepening around her. In one of the huts, she found an old radio. Miraculously, it still worked. She managed to call for help, her voice trembling as she explained her situation. The person on the other end assured her that rescue was on the way. As night fell, Lydia couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Strange noises echoed through the village, and she saw fleeting shadows moving at the edge of her vision. She huddled in a corner, trying to stay calm. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching. She held her breath, her heart pounding. A figure appeared in the doorway, but it wasn't a villager. It was a ghostly apparition, its eyes filled with sorrow. "You must leave this place," the ghost whispered. "It is cursed." Lydia's fear turned to terror as more apparitions appeared, their mournful cries filling the air. She ran out of the hut, the ghosts following her. She knew she had to get out of the village before the spirits trapped her there forever. Lydia ran through the night, guided only by the faint light of the moon. The savannah was a vast, endless expanse, and she had no idea where she was going. Her only thought was to get as far away from the haunted village as possible. Hours passed, and just as she felt her strength giving out, she saw headlights in the distance. The rescue team had arrived. She stumbled towards them, her legs barely holding her up. The rescuers found her just as she collapsed, lifting her into their vehicle and giving her water. She tried to explain what had happened, but her words came out in broken fragments. The team assured her that she was safe now. As they drove away, Lydia looked back at the savannah, the memories of the past few days etched into her mind. She had survived a nightmare, but she knew she would never forget the horrors she had witnessed. Back in the safety of the rescue camp, Lydia was treated for her injuries and given time to recover. She learned that the village she had stumbled upon was known for its dark history, a place where many had disappeared over the years. Lydia's story became a chilling tale of survival, a testament to her courage and determination. She returned to her home country, forever changed by her experience. She shared her story with others, hoping to raise awareness and prevent anyone else from falling into the same trap. The savannah remained a beautiful but treacherous place, its secrets hidden beneath the golden grass and wide skies. And while Lydia had escaped, the memories of the cannibal village and the haunted ruins stayed with her, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. Amazon horror, researchers uncover ancient pyramid. Deep in the heart of the Amazon rainforest, a group of researchers from various parts of the world had gathered to explore one of the last great mysteries of our planet. Led by Dr. Maria Sanchez, an esteemed archaeologist, the team included Dr. Robert Lewis, a historian specializing in ancient civilizations, Dr. Emily Nguyen, a botanist, and Carlos Mendez, a local guide with extensive knowledge of the Amazon. The team had received satellite images suggesting the presence of a large, pyramid-like structure hidden beneath the dense jungle canopy. The shape and size were strikingly similar to the pyramids of Egypt, but no such structures had ever been documented in the Amazon. The discovery had the potential to rewrite history, and the excitement among the team was palpable. They set off from a remote village, navigating the treacherous waterways and dense foliage of the rainforest. The journey was arduous, with the oppressive heat and humidity taking its toll on the researchers. Yet, their determination pushed them forward. As they ventured deeper into the jungle, Carlos guided them with confidence, hacking through the thick underbrush with his machete. The sounds of the rainforest surrounded them, exotic birds, rustling leaves, and the distant calls of unseen animals. The team moved cautiously, aware of the dangers that lurked in the Amazon. After several days of hard travel, they finally arrived at their destination. Before them stood an enormous structure, partially covered in vegetation. It was indeed a pyramid, its ancient stones hidden beneath centuries of growth. The sight took their breath away. "We found it," Dr. Sanchez whispered, awe in her voice. This could be one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of our time. The team set up camp at the base of the pyramid, eager to begin their exploration. As they cleared away the foliage, strange carvings and symbols began to emerge on the stone surface. The symbols were unlike anything they had seen before, a mix of familiar and alien elements. "This is incredible," Dr. Lewis said, examining the carvings. "These symbols, they suggest a connection to ancient civilizations we know, but there are elements that are completely foreign." Dr. Nguyen collected samples of the unique plant life growing around the pyramid, noting the unusual properties of the flora. "These plants are unlike any I've studied before," she said, her curiosity piqued. "It's as if this place has been untouched by time." As night fell, the team gathered around a campfire, discussing their plans for the next day. Little did they know, their journey into the unknown was about to take a terrifying turn. The first night at the pyramid was unsettling. The jungle, usually alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, was eerily silent. The researchers tried to brush off their unease, attributing it to exhaustion and the excitement of their discovery. As dawn broke, they resumed their work, exploring the exterior of the pyramid and documenting their findings. Carlos, the guide, ventured into the jungle to gather fresh water and supplies. Hours passed, and when he didn't return, the team began to worry. "We should look for him," Dr. Sanchez said, her voice filled with concern. "He wouldn't just disappear like this." The team split into pairs to search for Carlos, calling his name as they navigated the dense foliage. Dr. Sanchez and Dr. Lewis ventured deeper into the jungle, following a faint trail. Suddenly, they heard a rustling in the bushes ahead. "Carlos?" Dr. Sanchez called out, but there was no response. They pushed forward, the sense of unease growing stronger. Emerging into a small clearing, they found Carlos, or what was left of him. His body was mangled, torn apart by something powerful and merciless. Dr. Sanchez gasped, covering her mouth in horror. "What could have done this?" Dr. Lewis whispered, his face pale. Before they could react, a low growl echoed through the clearing. They turned to see a pair of glowing eyes watching them from the shadows. The creature stepped into the light, revealing itself to be a monstrous, hybrid being, a mix of reptilian and humanoid features, its scales glistening in the sunlight. The researchers stumbled back, their minds struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. The creature let out a deafening roar, and more of its kind emerged from the jungle, surrounding them. Dr. Sanchez and Dr. Lewis ran, adrenaline fueling their escape as the creatures pursued them. They burst back into the camp, shouting warnings to Dr. Nguyen and the other team members. "We have to leave. Now!" Dr. Sanchez screamed, grabbing their supplies. The team quickly packed up, abandoning their research in the face of imminent danger. As they fled, the creatures followed, their guttural growls growing louder. The researchers ran through the jungle, their hearts pounding, the terror of the unknown driving them forward. Desperation led them back to the pyramid, hoping the ancient structure would offer some refuge. They scrambled up the steps, entering a narrow passageway that led into the depths of the pyramid. The air was thick with the scent of decay and ancient stone. Inside, the passageways were dimly lit by shafts of sunlight filtering through cracks in the walls. Strange symbols and carvings adorned the interior, telling a story they couldn't decipher. As they ventured deeper, the growls of the creatures outside grew fainter, but their sense of foreboding intensified. "We need to find a way out," Dr. Nguyen said, her voice echoing in the stone corridor. "We can't stay here." They stumbled upon a large chamber, its walls covered in intricate murals depicting scenes of sacrifice and worship. In the center of the room stood an altar, adorned with artifacts and bones. The atmosphere was oppressive, as if the air itself was charged with ancient power. "This place, it's a tomb," Dr. Lewis said, his voice trembling. "A burial site for something, or someone." Dr. Sanchez approached the altar, her eyes drawn to a large, ornate chest. She opened it, revealing a collection of scrolls and ancient texts. "These writings, they describe rituals and offerings to appease the gods," she said. "But these gods are unlike any I've studied." As they examined the texts, a strange hum filled the air. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, and the ground beneath them trembled. The researchers looked at each other, fear in their eyes. "We need to leave," Dr. Nguyen urged. "Whatever is happening, it's not safe." Before they could move, the entrance to the chamber sealed shut, trapping them inside. The humming grew louder, and the symbols on the walls began to glow with an eerie light. The air became thick with a palpable sense of dread. Suddenly, the floor opened beneath them, and they were plunged into darkness. They landed in a subterranean chamber, the fall knocking the wind out of them. As they struggled to their feet, they realized they were not alone. In the dim light, they saw the outlines of strange, otherworldly beings. The creatures were unlike anything they had ever seen, ethereal and ghostly, their forms shifting and flickering. They seemed to be made of shadows and light, their eyes glowing with an unearthly brilliance. The beings moved silently, their presence both mesmerizing and terrifying. The researchers felt a pull, as if the creatures were drawing them closer. Dr. Sanchez tried to speak, but no sound came out. The air was thick with a strange energy, making it difficult to breathe. One of the beings stepped forward, its eyes locking onto Dr. Sanchez. She felt a wave of emotions wash over her, fear, curiosity, and a deep sense of foreboding. The creature raised a hand, and the chamber filled with a low, resonant hum. Visions flashed before their eyes, scenes of ancient rituals, sacrifices, and the construction of the pyramid. They saw the beings worshipped as gods, their power feared and revered by the ancient civilization that had built the structure. The visions were overwhelming, leaving the researchers disoriented and terrified. Suddenly, the beings vanished, leaving the chamber in complete darkness. The researchers heard the sound of stone grinding against stone, and a faint light appeared in the distance. They followed it, their minds reeling from what they had just witnessed. They emerged into another chamber, this one filled with strange, glowing crystals. The light from the crystals illuminated the room, revealing more carvings and symbols. The air was charged with energy, and they felt a strange sense of calm wash over them. "We need to find a way out of here," Dr. Lewis said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "These beings, they're not from this world." Dr. Sanchez nodded, her mind racing. "We need to document everything we've seen," she said, pulling out her notebook. "This discovery, it's beyond anything we could have imagined." As they began to document their findings, the ground trembled once more. The crystals pulsed with light, and the air grew thick with energy. The researchers felt a sense of urgency. They needed to leave before it was too late. The researchers navigated the labyrinthine passages of the pyramid, guided by the faint light of the glowing crystals. The ground continued to tremble, and the walls seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. They knew they were running out of time. They stumbled upon a hidden passageway, its entrance obscured by vines and debris. With a sense of desperation, they pushed through, emerging into a narrow tunnel that led upwards. The air grew fresher, and they could see a faint light at the end of the tunnel. As they climbed, the ground shook violently, and the tunnel walls began to crack. The researchers pushed forward, their determination fueled by the knowledge that their discovery needed to be shared with the world. They reached the end of the tunnel, emerging into the open air just as the ground gave way behind them. They found themselves on a small ledge overlooking the dense jungle. The pyramid loomed behind them, its stones glowing with an otherworldly light. The creatures from the jungle were nowhere to be seen, and the air was filled with the sounds of the rainforest. "We made it," Dr. Nguyen said, her voice filled with relief. "We need to get back to civilization and share what we found." The researchers made their way back to their camp, their minds reeling from the events they had witnessed. They gathered their supplies and began the journey back to the remote village, hoping to find a way to contact the outside world. After days of travel, they reached the village and managed to send a distress signal. A rescue team arrived, and the researchers were airlifted to safety. As they flew over the jungle, they looked back at the pyramid, its ancient stones hidden once more beneath the dense foliage. The discovery of the pyramid and the beings within it became a sensation, capturing the world's imagination. The researchers shared their findings, documenting the strange symbols, carvings, and the otherworldly beings they had encountered. The scientific community was both fascinated and skeptical, and debates raged over the implications of their discovery. Dr. Sanchez, Dr. Lewis, Dr. Nguyen, and Carlos became known as the team that had uncovered one of the greatest mysteries of the Amazon. Their journey had been filled with terror and wonder, and their discovery had opened a new chapter in the understanding of ancient civilizations and the unexplained phenomena of our world. The Amazon rainforest, with its dense foliage and hidden secrets, remained a place of mystery and danger. And while the researchers had escaped with their lives, the memories of the pyramid and the beings they had encountered stayed with them, a reminder of the unknown forces that still linger in the depths of the jungle. Coldwater Horror: Campers vs. Psychopath Woodsmen. Nestled in the shadow of the Appalachian Mountains, the small town of Coldwater, Vermont, was known for its dense forests and chilling climate. The cold, misty air gave the region a perpetual feeling of unease, and the townsfolk were few and far between. The forest surrounding Coldwater was thick with towering pines, their branches heavy with snow, creating an eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. One weekend, a group of friends decided to escape the city and enjoy a camping trip in the secluded woods near Coldwater. The group consisted of Jack, a seasoned camper, Emma, an adventurous spirit, Tom, a nature enthusiast, and Lisa, a photographer looking to capture the wintry landscape. They packed their gear and drove out to the remote area, their spirits high with anticipation. As they entered the forest, the temperature dropped noticeably, and the dense trees cast long shadows across the snow-covered ground. "This place is beautiful," Lisa said, her camera already clicking away. "It's like a winter wonderland." "Yeah, but it's also pretty creepy," Emma added, glancing around. "Let's hope we don't get lost." Jack, the most experienced camper, led the way, confident in his ability to navigate the woods. They found a clearing and set up their tents, the cold air biting at their faces as they worked. As night fell, they gathered around a campfire, sharing stories and warming themselves with hot cocoa. Unbeknownst to them, they had chosen a spot perilously close to the property of a reclusive local, a man known only as the Coldwater Woodsman. The townsfolk spoke of him in hushed tones, sharing tales of his eerie presence and rumored madness. Few had seen him, but those who had claimed he was not a man to be trifled with. As the friends settled in for the night, the forest around them grew silent. The crackling of the fire and the occasional rustle of leaves were the only sounds that broke the stillness. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. The first night in the forest was uneventful. The friends slept soundly, the cold air and the warmth of their sleeping bags lulling them into a deep slumber. However, as dawn broke and the light began to filter through the trees, an unsettling feeling crept over the camp. Tom was the first to notice something was amiss. He stepped out of his tent and saw strange, deep footprints in the snow, leading from the edge of their camp and disappearing into the woods. The prints were large and seemed to belong to a man, but they were erratic, as if the person had been circling their camp. "Guys, come look at this," Tom called out, his voice tinged with unease. The others emerged from their tents and examined the footprints. "Who could have been out here last night?" Emma asked, her breath visible in the frigid air. "Maybe it was a hunter," Jack suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. Lisa took a few photos of the tracks. "Whatever it was, it gives me the creeps. Let's just be careful today." They decided to stick close to the camp and keep a watchful eye on their surroundings. As the day wore on, they explored the forest, taking in the beauty of the winter landscape. Despite the strange footprints, they tried to enjoy their time, though an undercurrent of tension remained. That evening, as they gathered around the campfire once more, the conversation turned to local legends and ghost stories. Jack, always the storyteller, recounted tales of the Coldwater Woodsman, the mysterious figure who was said to haunt the forest. "Some say he was a logger who lost his mind after an accident," Jack said, his voice low and dramatic. "Others claim he's a ghost, a spirit of the woods who preys on those who trespass on his land." Emma shivered, drawing her coat tighter around her. "Well, I hope we don't run into him." As the night grew darker, the forest seemed to close in around them. The fire cast flickering shadows on the trees, and the cold air was filled with the sounds of the night, owls hooting, branches creaking, and the distant howl of the wind. The second night was far from uneventful. Around midnight, Lisa was awakened by a noise outside her tent. It was a faint rustling, as if something, or someone, was moving through the underbrush. She sat up, her heart pounding, and listened intently. The rustling grew louder, and she could hear heavy footsteps approaching. Panic set in, and she fumbled for her flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the interior of her tent. She unzipped the flap and peered outside, but saw nothing. "Guys, wake up," Lisa hissed, crawling out of her tent and waking the others. "There's something out there." The friends groggily emerged from their tents, their breath visible in the cold night air. They listened, and sure enough, they heard the footsteps too. The sound was coming closer, circling their camp just beyond the reach of the firelight. "Who's out there?" Jack called, his voice steady but tense. There was no response, only the continued crunching of snow underfoot. Tom grabbed a flashlight and scanned the perimeter of their camp. The beam of light swept across the trees, and for a brief moment, they saw a figure standing just at the edge of the clearing. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a heavy coat and a hat pulled low over his face. "Hello?" Emma called, trying to keep her voice calm. "Do you need help?" The man didn't respond. Instead, he turned and vanished into the darkness, his footsteps fading away. The friends were left standing in stunned silence, the cold night air chilling them to the bone. "Do you think that was the Coldwater Woodsman?" Lisa whispered, her voice shaking. "Whoever it was, we need to be careful," Jack said, his mind racing. "Let's keep the fire going and take turns keeping watch." They sat around the fire, the flickering flames casting eerie shadows on their faces. The sense of unease was palpable, and every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves set them on edge. As the night wore on, Jack took the first watch. He sat by the fire, his eyes scanning the darkness, his senses alert. The forest was silent, save for the occasional crackling of the fire and the distant howling of the wind. Just as he was beginning to relax, he heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching once more. Jack stood, gripping a heavy branch for protection, and stared into the darkness. The footsteps grew louder, and then, without warning, a figure lunged at him from the shadows. Jack swung the branch with all his might, connecting with the figure and sending it stumbling back. The firelight revealed the face of the Coldwater Woodsman, a gaunt, menacing figure with wild eyes and a cruel smile. He held an axe in one hand, the blade glinting in the firelight. "Get back!" Jack shouted, his voice filled with fear and determination. The woodsman laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the clearing. "You shouldn't have come here," he growled, advancing on Jack. The others woke to the commotion, scrambling to their feet and grabbing whatever they could find to defend themselves. The woodsman swung his axe, narrowly missing Jack, who dodged to the side and swung the branch again. "Run!" Jack yelled to his friends. "Get out of here!" Emma, Tom, and Lisa hesitated for a moment, torn between helping their friend and escaping. But the sight of the woodsman's crazed eyes made the decision for them. They turned and fled into the forest, their breaths coming in panicked gasps. The woodsman's attention shifted to the fleeing figures, and with a snarl, he chased after them. Jack, bruised and bleeding, tried to follow, but his injuries slowed him down. He could only watch in horror as his friends disappeared into the darkness, pursued by the relentless woodsman. Emma, Tom, and Lisa ran blindly through the forest, the cold air burning their lungs. They could hear the woodsman's footsteps behind them, growing closer with each passing moment. Panic fueled their flight, but the dense trees and underbrush made it difficult to navigate. Tom tripped over a root and fell, the impact knocking the wind out of him. Emma and Lisa stopped to help him up, but before they could, the woodsman was upon them. He swung his axe with brutal force, and Tom's scream was cut short as the blade struck him down. "No!" Emma screamed, grabbing a fallen branch and swinging it at the woodsman. Lisa joined in, the two women fighting desperately to fend off the attacker. The woodsman laughed again, easily deflecting their blows. "You can't escape," he taunted, his voice filled with malice. "This is my forest." In a final act of desperation, Emma and Lisa turned and ran, their hearts pounding with fear. They could hear the woodsman's footsteps behind them, relentless and unyielding. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees forming an impenetrable wall. Emma and Lisa ran until they could run no more, their bodies pushed to the limit. They stumbled into a small clearing, the cold air burning their lungs, and the terror of the night weighing heavily on them. The woodsman's footsteps had faded, but they knew he was still out there, hunting them. "We can't keep running," Lisa panted, her voice filled with exhaustion and fear. "We have to make a stand." Emma nodded, her determination renewed. "We need to find something to defend ourselves with. We can't let him win." They searched the clearing, finding a few large rocks and sturdy branches. Armed with their makeshift weapons, they prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The night was silent, the forest holding its breath in anticipation. The woodsman appeared at the edge of the clearing, his eyes gleaming with malice. He stepped forward, his axe raised, ready to finish what he had started. "You've put up a good fight," he sneered. "But it ends here." Emma and Lisa stood their ground, their fear giving way to a fierce determination. They knew they had no choice but to fight for their lives. As the woodsman advanced, they attacked, swinging their branches and throwing rocks with all their might. The woodsman deflected their blows, his strength and agility overwhelming. He swung his axe, narrowly missing Emma's head. She dodged to the side and swung her branch, hitting him in the leg and causing him to stumble. Lisa took the opportunity to strike, hitting the woodsman in the back with a large rock. He roared in pain and turned on her, his eyes filled with rage. Emma saw her chance and tackled him from behind, sending them both crashing to the ground. The woodsman struggled to his feet, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Emma and Lisa circled him, their determination unwavering. They knew they had to end this now, or they would never escape. In a final, desperate move, Emma swung her branch with all her strength, hitting the woodsman in the head. He staggered, his grip on the axe weakening. Lisa followed up with a blow to his chest, knocking the wind out of him. The woodsman fell to the ground, his axe slipping from his grasp. He lay there, defeated, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and fear. Emma and Lisa stood over him, their breaths coming in harsh, ragged gasps. "We did it," Lisa whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. Emma nodded, her body trembling with exhaustion. "Let's get out of here." They left the clearing, their steps unsteady but filled with determination. The forest seemed to open up around them, the way back to civilization clear. They didn't look back, knowing that the nightmare was finally over. As they stumbled back to their camp, they found Jack, injured but alive. He had managed to follow their trail, determined to find his friends. The three of them embraced, their relief overwhelming. They packed up their camp and left the forest, the cold air and the dark trees a distant memory. They knew they would never forget the terror they had faced, but they also knew they had survived, their strength and determination carrying them through. Back in Coldwater, they recounted their ordeal to the authorities, who promised to investigate the woodsman and his actions. The forest remained a place of mystery and danger, its secrets hidden beneath the snow and the trees. Emma, Lisa, and Jack returned to their lives, forever changed by their experience. They knew they had faced true terror and come out the other side, their bond stronger and their courage unshaken. The Coldwater woodsman was a legend, but they were survivors, and their story was one of triumph over fear. Cursed Woods, Demon Hunt after unearthing ancient box. In the heart of New Hampshire, near the small town of Hollow Creek, there was a dense and foreboding forest known to the locals as the Cursed Woods. Stories of strange occurrences, ghostly sightings, and inexplicable disappearances had surrounded the forest for generations. Despite the warnings, a group of friends decided to explore the forest, driven by curiosity and the thrill of adventure. The group consisted of Emily, a local history buff, Jake, an aspiring filmmaker, Sarah, an avid hiker, and Tom, Emily's boyfriend and a skeptic of all things supernatural. They were eager to document their journey and perhaps debunk the legends that had kept the townspeople at bay for so long. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the trees grew thicker and the light dimmer. The air was heavy with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Emily led the way, armed with a map and a sense of excitement. Jake filmed their progress, capturing the haunting beauty of the forest. "This place is incredible," Sarah said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's like stepping into another world." "Yeah, but it's also kinda creepy," Jake added, panning his camera around. "Perfect for our documentary, though." Tom rolled his eyes. "It's just a forest, guys. The only thing scary here is getting lost." As they continued their trek, they stumbled upon an old, weathered stone altar, partially hidden by vines and moss. The altar was adorned with strange symbols and carvings, unlike anything they had seen before. "Look at this," Emily said, brushing away the leaves. "This must be ancient. We have to document this." Jake eagerly filmed the altar while Sarah took pictures. Tom, however, felt a chill run down his spine. "We should be careful. Who knows what this thing is?" As Emily examined the altar, she found a small, ornate box nestled in a hollow. The box was made of dark wood, inlaid with silver symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint light. "Check this out," Emily said, holding up the box. "It looks valuable." "Let's take it back with us," Jake suggested. "It'll make a great centerpiece for our documentary." Reluctantly, Tom agreed, and they carefully placed the box in their backpack. As they started their journey back, the atmosphere in the forest seemed to change. The air grew colder, and the shadows deeper. An unsettling feeling of being watched crept over them. Night fell quickly, and the friends found themselves struggling to navigate the darkened forest. Strange noises echoed through the trees, whispers, footsteps, and distant growls. The sense of dread intensified with each passing moment. "We need to get out of here," Tom said, his voice shaking. "Something's not right." Suddenly, a chilling scream pierced the air. The friends froze, their hearts pounding. "What was that?" Sarah whispered, fear in her eyes. Before anyone could answer, they saw a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. It was tall and gaunt, with glowing red eyes and a twisted, demonic face. The creature moved with unnatural speed, heading straight for them. "Run!" Emily screamed, and they bolted through the forest, the creature in pursuit. Branches clawed at their clothes and faces as they stumbled through the underbrush. The demonic entity seemed to be everywhere at once, its growls and snarls filling the air. Emily clutched the box tightly, her mind racing with fear. They reached the edge of the forest, bursting out onto a narrow dirt road. Gasping for breath, they didn't stop running until they saw the lights of Hollow Creek in the distance. Back in the safety of Emily's house, the friends tried to make sense of what had happened. They gathered in the living room, the box placed on the coffee table. Emily's grandmother, Agnes, a wise and respected woman in the community, sensed their distress and joined them. "You've brought something terrible back with you," Agnes said, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the box. "That forest is cursed, and you've disturbed something that should have been left alone." Emily explained what they had found, and Agnes listened intently. When they finished, she nodded gravely. "That box is a vessel of dark power. It's said to contain the essence of an ancient demon. The forest has protected it for centuries, keeping it hidden from the world." Jake, ever the skeptic, frowned. "So, what do we do? How do we get rid of it?" Agnes stood and went to a dusty bookshelf, pulling out an old, leather-bound book. "There's only one way to stop this," she said. "We must destroy the box, but it's not as simple as it sounds. The demon will do everything in its power to prevent that." The friends exchanged nervous glances. "How do we destroy it?" Tom asked. Agnes flipped through the book, finding the page she was looking for. "We need to perform a ritual of purification and destruction. It must be done at the altar where you found it. Only then can we break the curse and banish the demon." The following night, armed with the instructions from Agnes, the friends made their way back to the cursed woods. The atmosphere was even more oppressive than before, the air thick with malevolence. Agnes had given them sacred herbs, candles, and a ritual dagger, along with a list of incantations to recite. As they approached the altar, the demonic presence grew stronger. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and the air was filled with an otherworldly hum. They placed the box on the altar and arranged the candles around it. Emily took a deep breath and began the incantation, her voice steady but filled with tension. The others joined in, their voices blending in a rhythmic chant. The air around them crackled with energy, and the symbols on the altar began to glow. Suddenly, the demon appeared, its red eyes blazing with fury. It lunged at them, but an invisible barrier formed by the ritual kept it at bay. The creature roared in frustration, its form flickering like a shadow in the wind. "Keep going," Agnes urged from the book she had sent with them. "You're almost there." Emily continued the incantation, her voice rising in intensity. The candles flickered wildly, and the box began to shake. With a final, powerful chant, she plunged the ritual dagger into the box. A blinding light erupted from the altar, and the demon let out a deafening scream. The box shattered, and the light consumed the creature, dissolving it into nothingness. The forest fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. The friends stood in stunned silence, the weight of what they had just accomplished settling over them. The cursed forest, once dark and foreboding, seemed almost peaceful now. The ancient curse had been lifted, and the demon banished. They returned to Hollow Creek, exhausted but triumphant. Agnes welcomed them back, her eyes filled with pride and relief. "You've done well," she said. "The curse is broken, and the demon is gone. The forest will be at peace now." Emily hugged her grandmother, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Grandma. We couldn't have done it without you." Over the next few days, the story of their ordeal spread through the town. The friends became local heroes, their bravery and determination celebrated by the townsfolk. The cursed woods, once a place of fear and superstition, became a symbol of triumph over darkness. The friends returned to their normal lives, forever changed by their experience. They had faced a nightmare and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. The box was gone, but the memories of that terrifying night would stay with them, a reminder of the power of courage and the strength of friendship. Haunted Forest, surviving the curse of Hoia-Baciu. In the heart of Transylvania, Romania, lies the infamous Hoia-Baciu Forest, often referred to as the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. Known for its eerie atmosphere and tales of paranormal activity, the forest has long been a source of fascination and fear. It is said that those who enter the forest never return the same, if they return at all. A group of 4 researchers decided to explore the mysteries of Hoia-Baciu, hoping to document any supernatural occurrences and perhaps debunk the legends. The team consisted of Alex, a paranormal investigator, Maria, a historian, Elena, a local guide, and David, a videographer. They arrived in Cluj-Napoca, the nearest city, and made their way to the edge of the forest. The locals warned them of the dangers and urged them to reconsider, but the team was determined. Armed with cameras, recording equipment, and a deep curiosity, they ventured into the forest. The entrance to Hoia-Baciu was unremarkable, but as they delved deeper, the atmosphere changed. The air grew thick and heavy, and an unsettling silence enveloped them. The trees, twisted and gnarled, seemed to watch their every move. "This place is even creepier than I imagined," David said, filming the surroundings. "I can see why it's called the most haunted forest in the world." Maria nodded, her eyes scanning the forest. There are stories of ghostly apparitions, strange lights, and even time slips. It's as if this place exists in a different dimension. Elena, who had grown up hearing tales of the forest, led the way with a mix of caution and curiosity. "Stay close," she warned. "It's easy to get lost here, and the forest doesn't like intruders." As they set up camp near the forest's infamous clearing, a perfectly circular area where no vegetation grows, the sun began to set. The clearing, known as the Dead Zone, was said to be the epicenter of the forest's supernatural activity. "Let's start setting up the equipment," Alex suggested. We need to capture as much as we can tonight." As darkness fell, the forest came alive with strange sounds, whispers, footsteps, and distant cries. The team gathered around the campfire, their equipment ready to capture any paranormal phenomena. The first night in Hoyabachi was unnerving. As the team sat around the campfire, the forest seemed to close in around them. The trees cast long, twisted shadows, and the air was filled with an eerie stillness. Alex set up motion detectors and infrared cameras around the clearing, while David filmed their every move. Maria and Elena studied the ancient symbols and markings on the trees, noting their significance. "This place has a dark history," Maria said, her voice hushed. "There are tales of disappearances, ghostly apparitions, and strange lights. Some believe the forest is a gateway to another dimension." As the night wore on, the team began to experience strange phenomena. The motion detectors went off without explanation, and the cameras captured fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures. Whispers and faint cries echoed through the trees, sending chills down their spines. "I don't like this," Elena admitted, her eyes wide with fear. "It feels like we're being watched." Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the sky, illuminating the clearing. The team stared in awe and terror as the light descended, bathing the area in an otherworldly glow. The cameras recorded the event, capturing the mysterious light as it hovered above the clearing. "What is that?" David whispered, his voice trembling. Before anyone could answer, the light vanished, plunging the clearing back into darkness. The air was charged with an electric tension, and the team felt a growing sense of dread. "We need to stay calm," Alex said, trying to steady his voice. "Let's review the footage and see what we captured." As they examined the recordings, they were shocked to see shadowy figures moving through the trees, their forms barely visible in the infrared footage. The motion detectors had recorded unexplained movements, and the audio captured faint whispers and cries. "This is incredible," Alex said, his excitement tempered by fear. "We've documented real paranormal activity." The team decided to stay vigilant, taking turns keeping watch. The forest remained eerily silent, but the sense of unease never left them. As dawn approached, they were exhausted but determined to continue their investigation. The next day, the team explored deeper into the forest, following a trail that led to an old, abandoned village. The village was said to be cursed, its inhabitants having vanished without a trace many years ago. The houses were in ruins, and the air was thick with an oppressive atmosphere. "This place is giving me the creeps," Elena said, her voice shaking. "It feels like we're walking through a ghost town." Maria examined the remains of the village, noting the ancient symbols carved into the walls. "These markings are similar to the ones in the clearing," she said. "They might be part of an ancient ritual or protection spell." As they explored the village, they found an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. The journal belonged to a villager who had written about strange occurrences and the growing fear among the inhabitants. The last entry spoke of a mysterious artifact hidden in the forest, said to be the source of the village's curse. "We need to find this artifact," Alex said. "It might explain the paranormal activity in the forest." Following the journal's clues, they ventured deeper into the woods. The forest grew darker and more foreboding, the trees twisting into unnatural shapes. The sense of being watched intensified, and the air was filled with whispers and faint cries. Finally, they reached a hidden cave, its entrance covered in ancient symbols. Inside, they found the artifact, a strange, ornate box made of dark wood and inlaid with silver. The box pulsed with a faint, eerie light. "This must be it," Maria said, her voice filled with awe and fear. "The source of the curse." As Alex carefully picked up the box, the forest seemed to come alive. The ground trembled, and a chilling wind swept through the trees. The whispers grew louder, and shadowy figures emerged from the darkness, their eyes glowing with an unholy light. "We need to get out of here," Elena shouted, panic in her voice. The team fled the cave, the shadowy figures in pursuit. The forest twisted around them, the path back to their camp becoming a maze of gnarled trees and tangled roots. The air was filled with an otherworldly howling, and the ground seemed to shift beneath their feet. Breathless and terrified, the team finally reached the edge of the forest. They stumbled onto the dirt road that led back to Hollow Creek, their hearts pounding and their minds racing. The artifact in Alex's hands pulsed with an ominous energy, and the shadowy figures were still visible in the distance, watching them. "We need to figure out what to do with this thing," David said, his voice shaky. "It's the source of all this madness." Back in Hollow Creek, they took refuge in Maria's grandmother's house. Grandmother Irina was a wise and respected elder in the community, known for her knowledge of ancient rituals and folklore. When they explained their ordeal and showed her the artifact, her eyes widened in recognition. "This is the Box of Shadows," Irina said, her voice grave. "It is an ancient relic, used to imprison a powerful and malevolent spirit. The villagers must have hidden it in the forest to protect themselves, but it seems the spirit has found a way to influence the world once more. How do we stop it?" Alex asked, desperation in his voice. "There's only one way," Irina replied. "We must perform a ritual to destroy the box and banish the spirit forever. But be warned, the spirit will not let us do this easily. It will fight back with all its power." Irina gathered the necessary items for the ritual: sacred herbs, candles, and a ceremonial dagger. She instructed the team on their roles, emphasizing the importance of remaining focused and strong. "We will perform the ritual in the clearing where you found the box," Irina said. "It is a place of great power, and it will help us channel the energy needed to destroy the artifact." As night fell, the team returned to the forest, accompanied by Irina. The air was thick with tension, and the forest seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. The shadowy figures watched from the darkness, their presence a constant reminder of the danger they faced. They reached the clearing and set up the ritual. Candles were placed around the altar, and the sacred herbs were burned to cleanse the area. Irina began the incantation, her voice steady and strong, guiding the team through the ritual. The box pulsed with an intense light, and the ground trembled as the spirit fought back. The shadowy figures closed in, their eyes glowing with fury. The team held their ground, focusing on the ritual and following Irina's lead. As the ritual reached its climax, Irina raised the ceremonial dagger. "By the power of the ancients, we banish you, spirit of darkness," she cried, plunging the dagger into the box. A blinding light erupted from the box, and a deafening scream filled the air. The shadowy figures dissolved into nothingness, and the ground stopped trembling. The box shattered, and the malevolent energy dissipated, leaving the clearing bathed in an eerie calm. The team collapsed, exhausted but relieved. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The curse of Hoyabachi was lifted, and the forest returned to its natural state, its sinister presence banished forever. Back in Hollow Creek, the team was hailed as heroes. The tale of their bravery spread through the town, and the legend of the Cursed Woods became a story of triumph over evil. They had faced the unknown and conquered it, their bond stronger than ever. Maria, Alex, Elena, and David returned to their lives, forever changed by their experience. They had faced true terror and emerged victorious, their courage and determination carrying them through the darkest of nights. And while the forest of Hoyabachi would always hold its secrets, the memory of the Box of Shadows and the spirit they had banished would remain a testament to the power of courage and the strength of the human spirit.